You're listening to the Limitless Leadership Podcast, the podcast designed to help automotive repair shops learn how to lead, coach, train, and manage their team better by sharing proven techniques and thought-provoking interviews from industry leaders. Are you ready to transform your leadership skills by tapping into unrecognized potential to achieve limitless results? Let's get ready for liftoff. It's time to go from great to greater. Here's today's episode.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Limitless Leadership Podcast. We're going to jump right in with our guest today. Our guest today is a husband, first and foremost. He's a father. He's also the VP of training for AutoFlow, and he's the host of Speak Up, Effective Communication on the Aftermarket Radio Network. Our guest today is Mr. Craig O'Neill.
Hey, Josh. Thanks for having me here. It's so great to be here.
Man, hey, I'm glad you're here, Craig. You and I have gotten to know each other through the years. I'm going to ask that you share how we met, but also your background. Man, I'm excited for our audience to get to know who you are because you are an amazing person. I don't say that about everyone on the podcast, even though everyone is, but man, you are incredible. And I'm really glad that you're on this episode.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, dude, I feel really uniquely blessed in the fact that I come into contact with people like you. My background is fully in my family's transmission shop. Spent over 20 years of my life, and I'm 41. So you do some math, and yes, I've been in software now for it's almost 7 years.
Okay.
I started very young. I should say more than 20 years in the family business because, dude, I was like 8 years old.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, when you're in the family business, I mean, you're born into that business.
Literally born. Yeah, some people join this industry. I was born into
it. That's it. Yeah. Well, let's talk about your time in the industry. Let's talk about your background, who you are. Go ahead and share with the audience who Craig O'Neill is.
Hey, thanks, Josh. Now, look, like I said, I was born in this industry. I found my way into loving it from my background in it. I wanted to teach history. Shoot, Josh, I wanted to be a mission pilot for a while too. My journey outside of high school, I thought was going to eventually take me out of the family business. Just one problem. Through friends at church, I met the right girl, and I knew I wanted to get married and start a family. And guess what? I know how that model works. Through the family business, went right back into the role. I had been rebuilding transmissions since I was 14. I'd been sitting in that office, learning how to communicate with clients, observing and watching how people talk to people as adults in as early as I can remember. So I rolled right into it really from a good spot. And we didn't need another rebuilder when I was finishing college. So I went to the service desk and absolutely loved it. We were back, what year is it? It would have been 2003. First $1 million years we saw in that transmission shop. Back then, it's a pretty big deal for it to be a $1 million shop.
Yeah.
Gross sales, right? And great. That was really rewarding. 3 years, year after year after year, record numbers. And all right, cool. But you know what was really cool? I didn't care much about that stuff. I was able to get married, buy a home, and start my family at the very young age of 20 years old.
Okay.
What other industry do you get to do that in? This one.
Very good. So let's talk about, you mentioned, so you started back 2003 at the desk. I know why you loved it, because one of the things is also because you get to communicate with folks. I know you well enough to know, Craig, that you genuinely love people and appreciate and value people. And communication is a big part of your role today. Speak to the audience about how communication plays a factor in your own life and how it can play a factor in others.
Absolutely. And that was my proving grounds for communication and finding my love for it. Now, my love of communication is really a lot more one-on-one conversational stuff. I like talking to people, hearing their stories. I had a lot of natural curiosity for that. And I've talked a little bit on the podcast. We started to Speak Up, Effective Communication on the Aftermarket Radio Network. It's a cool new thing for me right now. And I love when I get to have a guest, and we've recently had you as a guest and several other people, and I get to have great conversations. One of my favorite conversations, though, was with a guy from my Toastmasters club, Evan Wisner. We did a topic on the D-Day anniversary, 80th anniversary of D-Day. So let me take you back as Craig at the counter in the shop, because Craig at the counter at the shop was still meeting veterans of World War II. What a great generation. Like, people forget this. The young generation coming up now that are in their 20s, probably not many conversations with living World War II veterans and history buff, huge history buff. I was reading thick novels about the Air Force in World War II, and it was B-17 is my favorite airplane in the world. I think it's the most beautiful aircraft ever made. It's just a part of history that has always really captured my attention. And getting to talk to people that were there and through that and hearing their stories, literally, I'd had a parts guy that would come and he would talk to me about his experiences in the war. And he didn't normally talk about it, is what he was telling me too. But I somehow became this guy that people felt comfortable telling stories to. And I didn't have any idea on what those ingredients necessarily were, other than my genuine curiosity. And somehow, I guess, I don't know what it would be. I would call it maybe affability or just non-judgment or just kindness or true interest, whatever it is. I enjoy those conversations and the fact that people felt comfortable having them. And shoot, my techs would get pissed at me all the time because I was always talking to clients for too long. Phone might be ringing, but I might not get it in time because I'm engrossed in this conversation with someone. It was really tough being one service advisor for 7 technicians for a while when I'm that guy. But
Craig, you and I have talked a lot about the book How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Yeah. You and I are both big believers in Dale Carnegie and his teachings, and we both know that in that book he talks about how if there's one thing that everybody loves to talk about, it's themselves. And you just shared one of your ingredients to getting people to open up to you is just being curious. Can you speak to the importance of living a life of curiosity in your everyday life?
Absolutely, dude. And that's the real thing, right? If you actually do care about people, you're probably going to want to ask them questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it starts simple. I'm the guy that when I'm having small talk conversation, and I don't know you yet, I usually like to know where you're from and what the weather's like.
Okay.
People make jokes about this all the time. Oh yeah, that's how the weather goes. You know what? People's reaction to that tells you a lot, and usually can lead to the next thing. It absolutely does. I am always the guy in Michigan. I point to my hand of where I'm from, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's cold there." Sure is, whatever. But no, what's it like by you? The storms, the weather, the things, the this and that, and that'll lead to some clue. Once people open up a little bit, if it's an open-ended question, they give you another clue every single time. And I think, Josh, what kills me is that a lot of times we don't give our staff members that flexibility and that time in the workspace to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've just been the guy that's willing to spend the time in that area. It, for me, always felt more important that I get into a relational point of familiarity with someone.
So Craig, let me ask you this, because I mean, you're saying a key word here, time. And if you're listening, you're probably thinking, hey, that's great, but I don't have time. And it's easy for all of us to say we don't have time. It's another thing for us to say we're not making time. You said a couple of things I want to hang on for a moment. Time is one. So I'm going to ask you, how can we make the time when we don't have the time? And the second thing is you talked about open-ended questions and how important open-ended questions are in relation to questions that weren't a simple yes or no response. Can you speak to the importance of making time when we don't have it and why open-ended questions are your suggested direction?
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And this goes right into some operational theory too. And we met, of course, you were working with Christian Brothers, and so was I from a different position of texting and communication and workflow and all the things. And wow, that brand gets it. They have the nice difference, for example. And it is. And one of those ingredients is every time, the idea at least is every time someone comes in, they're going to feel like someone actually cares about them.
Yes.
The business is structured that way. The organization is oriented towards that point. I don't remember if we talked about this or not. I came across a great article. I'll be doing a talk on this in my show as well, related to the term client relating capability. And that is a differentiator for something businesses can use to help them stand out from other shops in their market. And I would say that you had the privilege of also working with an organization that had an orientation. That's one of the three ingredients for the client relating capability to go up. The article, by the way, was from George S. Day. The title was How to Create a Superior Client Relating Capability. Okay. So orientation, structure and configuration, and use of information were the three things that were cited in his article. Orientation, like you've been exposed to this organization that has that. The structure and configuration. Typically, most the shops, like we work with independent aftermarket shops, you're going to see that this doesn't exist in a lot of them. They haven't structured themselves.
Why is that? Why do a lot of independent shops miss the mark on client relating capability?
Perfect question, because car count usually is too much of an emphasis. I feel like get it in, get it out, get it in, get it out. Fix this problem, get it fixed, solved the problem. Fixing problems isn't what we do. We're serving people. We're in the transportation business. This is a customer service business.
Say that again, Craig, because that's important.
We're a customer service business. It's a relationship.
We're using the vessel of automotive repair to serve people first. Okay.
That's correct. Yeah, that's an element of our service. So look, I mentioned this earlier. I wanted to go in the mission field for a while as a pilot, and we have an aviation background in our family. It was hard for me initially in college. Both my wife and I, when we were dating, we were both of the mindset that we were going to go into a mission field. And it was hard at first, theologically in our minds at that time. Like it felt like a bigger thing to go and serve with something big like that out in the field. Until I realized like there is a field right here every single day in our community where we get to connect with people, truly care about them, and make an impact. And it doesn't necessarily need to be on a religious point, but you do get to serve.
How can we make an impact right where we're at?
Yeah, exactly. And for me, it wasn't good enough to just fix car, get it out the door, fix car, get it out there. If you don't have the time, the structure, and the configuration to make that connection, you're probably not even going to be very good at that. As you well know, and I do this with my home Toastmasters club, Toastmasters public speaking club. One of the things we definitely need to discuss here too.
Yes, I get into that.
Oh yeah. So I use them as a focus group of people who are not automotive professionals. And I asked them this question in a meeting. Oh gosh, it was probably a couple of years ago. I asked them this question. I talked about this in one of my podcast episodes. I asked them, how many of you have ever heard the term, ever sent you?
Say that again.
How many of you have ever heard the term, ever sent you? I'm talking to people, not automotive people, and they're like, I don't think I've heard that one, Craig. No one had. In a group of about 15, 20 professionals from other industries in my local community. So you never heard the term. I bet you've used it because you might have had a repair done at your auto repair shop, and then you had to go back and you said something to the line of, ever since you worked on my car, I've had, and they're like, oh yeah. Oh, I've said something like that.
Yeah, we all have, ever since you.
But what's the root ingredient of what's the root cause of this problem? Why would an ever since you type complaint happen in a shop? I always feel like, look, number one fear any client is going to tell you in this industry, it's that they fear that auto repair shops are going to sell them something they don't need. Number one fear. And my correction for my Toastmasters club is this. That's not the thing you need to fear the most. The thing you need to fear the most is that they're hurrying too quick between two jobs and they're not looking at your vehicle thoroughly and are failing to recommend something that could be very detrimental to your safety and well-being.
Time.
That should be the biggest fear.
Right.
That's not. And our technicians should have that air of responsibility, but they don't because we need them to fix the problem and only the problem. And there's so many things that related to communication on this topic that I feel like this is where we're losing the trust in our industry. And so back to the mission field concept, right? Like this is an industry I grew up in. You've been around it long enough to recognize too, what do you need to work 2 weeks maybe before you realize, oh yeah, there's a stigma.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yep. Anybody I talk to starts to feel it. And it's frustrating. It was frustrating growing up in an honest, good family business and to be treated as though what I'm telling someone might not be true. It wasn't who we were. It's not how any of the professionals I worked with ever were. But we had to go get around that stigma and really get that. And I found it was easiest, back to some of the communication points for me, conveying the fact that we're honest people. The more we talked about ourselves, the less trust you build.
Yeah, it's almost like a concept of proving yourself. Let your actions do the talking. Craig, you know, I mean, there's a black eye in this industry for a reason, and at the root of it, a lot of the fears, the complaints, the concerns that guests have, which are understandable given the reputation, at the root of it, it does boil down to communication, or in most cases, a lack thereof. So how can we make an impact? How can we, in the seat that we're in, make an impact without having to go do some grander scale, go on a mission field? Like, how can we make an impact right where we're at?
We need to develop our ambassadors. And that's every single one of us, right? We don't have a strong diplomatic corps here in the automotive aftermarket.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. But that's effectively the mindset that we all need to carry as we move around in our communities. And look, like one of the worst things that you can do in the industry is go and badmouth another shop or badmouth elements of it.
Yeah.
It's absolutely one of the worst things. Not to be ignorant of problems, but the way we react to those problems and can help correct them needs to be done in a positive way. I have a positive way, and my boss, Chris Cloutier, CEO of AutoFlow, and our friend Carm Capriato and Tracy Capriato with Remarkable Results Radio, we started Toastmasters Club for the industry, an online club. It's called Remarkable Results Toastmasters. It's free for people to join as a guest. It is, we do want automotive professionals in this club because we want to develop this
The ambassador,
core, I guess, of the industry. I'm going to start referring to it as a diplomatic core.
I love it, Craig. I mean, to me, so and I'll say for audience listening, you know, you graciously invited me as a guest. I was a guest at one of your Toastmaster events, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. A great group of folks on that call, and I love what I'm hearing, because you're absolutely right. We have to have a development. We have to have ambassadors first and foremost, and a development of ambassadors who can really pick up the flag and carry it in a positive direction for the industry.
All right. So you're hitting on my grand vision for wanting to even do something for starting a Toastmasters club for the industry. It isn't about that club specifically. Actually, it's really my only goal initially was to help people get introduced to what Toastmasters is. What it is, it's a public speaking and leadership development club. It's a volunteer organization. It's international. You can go check it out at toastmasters.org. And no, it's not about giving a toast really well, although I think there was an element to that in some of the earliest clubs. It's 100 years old, this organization, Josh, just this year. Actually, I think literally just this week, Toastmasters is 100 years.
Wait, I mean, if you're in Toastmasters, you and I both know, Craig, you can and will deliver a much better toast through Toastmasters. So, I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah, it's so funny. People come to a guest as a meeting and say, "Oh yeah, I thought we'd be having some wine or something." There's no rule against that.
Yeah, there you go.
But it is not the point. No, what it is it's a group of people that you meet with and you practice your communication and leadership skills with. And you do that through planned speeches, and you do this through part of the meeting is always devoted to what we call table topics. It's for extemporaneous speaking. It's a big word, but it means impromptu speaking, which is 90% of what we do. Service advisor is thrust into a conversation with a client on the phone. That's impromptu conversation. Now, although you have a good context in that environment, you don't know what's going to come out of the mouth of another person. And so your reaction to you got to be able to think on your feet, speak clearly, watch your ahs, ers, ums, and your pace and your vocal variety, all the elements that go into really good communication. You get to practice those things with a group of people that, most importantly with the club, they give you feedback and evaluate you on several pieces of criteria. And through learning and watching how feedback and evaluations are done, you get to improve not only yourself, but you also get to participate in feedback and evaluation for another person who submits themselves for feedback and evaluation. So Josh, you were in the Air Force, right? You went through a lot of training there. I've done martial arts for a good portion of my life as well. And you've probably had some physical training that they go you through.
Yep. Yeah,
chair force arguments, not really fair.
Chair force, what? Never heard it. Yeah. No, you're right, Craig. And so in the Air Force, especially in my career field, which is security forces, there is some hand-to-hand combat Ikkyo grip is coming to mind. And so that type of hand-to-hand combat was something that we trained for a brief time.
And you have a buddy that
school.
does that, and you get to practice on each other, right? Like, so martial arts is really good for this. I did a Japanese style Matsumara Seido Shorin-ryu. It's Orthodox Okinawan karate, and really cool. My dad is my sensei. I think, gosh, dude, he's like an 8th dan. He's really highly ranked in that system. Pretty cool. Tough as nuts, dude. My dad is a solid brick wall. He's bigger than me. But the point is, like, you have an uki, this person who sacrifices their body for a moment to allow you to practice a technique. And there's some pain involved sometimes as well. And discomfort goes along with that, right? Toastmasters Club, no pain physically, but you get that same principle of someone is allowing you to practice a technique, and it could be rough. For some people who are new to communication speaking, it might be all over the place. Gosh, Josh, I've seen grown men get in front of the group, have a speech ready to go, quivering in fear, and start to cry in front of the group, and then abort and sit down.
Craig, it's no secret to a lot of folks that public speaking is one of the most common fears. In fact, what I've heard that it is the number one fear of people ahead of dying. So the joke is that people would rather be in the casket than delivering their own eulogy.
Seinfeld did a piece on that. Yes, yeah. It's brilliant.
Well, and you mentioned, Craig, too, also the concept of discomfort. You know, there's no pain physically with Toastmasters, but there might be some level of discomfort if you're afraid of public speaking. But we both know growth and comfort cannot coexist. So Toastmasters is a phenomenal tool and resource for growth in public speaking.
And I'll tell you this: the people who stick with it and keep doing it, and martial arts has an attrition rate, so does Toastmasters, and many times. The people who stick with it, I've seen that same guy who sat down with, like, crying, basically, just slightly, you could tell, right? Get up and give a speech and got through it. And then, you know what? Everyone else that saw him conquer that fear in that club, they're the ones with the tear in their eye then. And it's beautiful. I love watching that happen. And then they become good over a period of time, a couple of months. Sometimes people have really got their anxiety under control and that sort of thing. It's powerful, but it isn't just for the people who are super afraid of it. This is a club, right? So back to the why we created the online club. I created it so you could see what Toastmasters is like, so that you like it, and then you go join your local community club and be the automotive professional in your local club. If you go on that website and type in your zip code, you will find the clubs that exist around your area.
And there's a lot of them. You can do it online, you could do it in person. There's a lot of clubs in your area. I think this is great, Craig. Just the concept, and something I don't want to just glaze over. When I'm hearing you talk about the individual who is quivering in front of a few people online, borderline tears in his eye, and when he delivers that club, those club members are also, it's this sense of pride that they have for this individual. Everyone's doing it together. And so what I'm really trying to share here is you're not alone. Everyone feels discomfort. Everyone feels a level of uncomfortability when delivering a message or a speech in Toastmasters, but you're not alone. And I love this phrase, we can go fast alone, but we can go further together. And when you have a core of people in a club who are there for you, supporting you, advocating for you, being there for you, that's going to go a long way. It's going to speak to your confidence. It's going to be able to speak to your ability to go through something and grow through something.
Absolutely. And it's a gift, and it keeps on giving. Chris, my boss, is the one who sent me. And it was a funny story. I was in a web meeting doing some training on software with the shop group had 3 locations. There was another trainer that was on the call and so I'm on the call with my boss, another coach that I respect in the industry, and a client who I'm also trying to impress. And being new to that space, Craig's got to prove how smart he is by talking a lot. A lot. And I did, it turns out, because the feedback that I had from Chris after the call is like, hey, Craig, you should check out Toastmasters. Oh, what's that, Chris? And you explained why. And oh, was there something wrong with my presentation? Oh, you did good, but you don't pause. So
Craig, can I ask you, because you're touching on something that's really important. When I say the word communication, a lot of our listeners might be thinking about, when they hear that word communication, they're thinking about what's coming out of their mouth rather than what's going into their ears. How important is it that we're implementing this concept of truly listening when communicating effectively?
when I first went as a guest to my home club, it was the outgoing president at the time of the club. I was there for one meeting where Shane was the president, Shane Sievers, and he's become a friend now as well. And he said, he was the first person I ever heard this from, but everybody comes to Toastmasters, he said, to learn how to communicate better, how to speak better. But what they don't tell you is the first thing you're going to learn is how to listen better.
What does that mean? What does that mean? How to listen better?
Well, you spend more time listening and you're going to have a lot more knowledge and understanding of the people that you're speaking to. And when you do have something to say, then it's simply going to be more effective. But listening skills are low across the board. We live in a distracted world.
Yeah.
Now, our clients live in a distracted world. My brain some days feels broken. I personally hate these things. I'm holding up a cell phone. This is I'm one of those guys. I could leave it behind and leave this technological realm that we've created behind and probably live very, very happily. I think all of us could. Listening has gone so low lately with the level of distractions that we have. Most people, when we're in a conversation now, they're usually at best thinking about what they're going to say next.
Yeah.
And that's not real listening at that point. And if that's where you're finding your brain going, your benefit in Toastmasters is going to be through the roof, because you will sit and listen to evaluation. You'll sit and listen to speeches. You'll eventually give some speeches yourself and then listen to an evaluation on it. You're going to be thrust into a situation where listening is a paramount skill. And in order to get the most out of it, you'll have to be able to embrace that. It's really that simple. Like, I'll give you one example, Josh. I think you saw it. I don't remember who did the role, but you saw the counter in the Toastmasters meeting you're in, right? And their job in a Toastmasters meeting, every time there's a guy who does this, or gal, and they count every filler word, tisk, little filler, anything other than a stately pause as you transition a sentence. That gets counted. And when you take that role the first time as a new member, once you become a member, you can take roles in the meeting. There's several roles. You're broken. For a minute, you're going to be broken that whole rest of the week. After you've done that job one time, you're going to catch all of them from yourself, in your emails, in your text messages, all these filler words that don't need to exist, that detract from otherwise smooth and clear communication. It forces you to listen and track. It's a cool job.
Yeah. And it's hugely beneficial. I think that is one more reason that we can be mindful of, okay, I'm gonna be listening and be mindful of my filler words, my my ers, my ums. Yeah. Can I ask you, Craig, why is it so important that we listen to understand rather than listening to reply, which is what you were alluding to earlier?
Yeah. I always like to break this down into some examples that our audience in the auto repair industry specifically can respect, and anyone that's in any service industry. There are clues people give you about their use of a vehicle in this particular case. If you ask open-ended questions, you're going to get those answers. One example I always use around springtime here in Michigan, I have this beautiful painting behind me. My wife paints of the Sleeping Bear Dunes.
Your wife painted that?
Yeah, my wife's
That's incredible. Artist, hey, if you're listening, tune into this YouTube episode. We have the entire episode on YouTube. Beautiful painting behind Craig.
Yeah, and anyone who's been to Michigan, and I'm pointing to my hand now, which is my map of Michigan, and the little fingers on the north part of our lower peninsula, that's where the Sleeping Bear Dunes, third most beautiful state park in the nation by many standards. Water's as blue as the Caribbean. I always tell people it's not as warm. Now, the thing is, I know here in Grand Rapids, springtime comes, summer's on the way. I asked them, when are you guys going north this year? And they will tell you when, and they will also add where in north they're going to go. And now you know that they're going, is this the vehicle you're going to bring, right? Little things like that. And you have this you can build a strategy around open-ended questions, get people talking. But not only will they tell you where they're going, they're also going to tell you that, oh yeah, our mom and dad have a house up there on the lake, so we stay at the cottage for a few weeks and this and that and blah 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 blah. It all comes out for certain personalities.
Well, can I stop you there, Craig? Because you just gave a great example. You asked, when are you guys going north this year? You didn't say, are you going up north this year? It's when, because you know you're going to get some more than a simple yes or no response.
Yep. Yeah, and even if it's, oh yeah, we're not going this year. Oh no, you going anywhere else? Cool. Yeah, and it's like little stuff. Yeah. Like, where do you go if you don't go north and you live in Michigan? Like,
we all go. Everyone goes north.
Yeah, you going to Chicago? Actually, the Chicago people come north to us.
Yeah. Hey man, water as blue as the Caribbean. You might be seeing me up there pretty soon.
You got to do it. Yep. One of these days, I have this dream of having some kind of, not necessarily an event, maybe even a retreat where people, shop owners, I don't care who, come up here. We'll go camping up there or something like that. Get out in the woods, ditch the cell phones for like 3 days. You can't see it in this painting, but there are islands behind the Sleeping Bear Dunes. They're the North and South Manitou Islands. They let you camp on those things. You got to take a ferry boat there and you can stay a few nights. It's pretty cool. So
love it. So Craig, if I'm a shop owner, if I am a business owner for that matter, doesn't have to be a shop owner, but if I'm listening and if I'm hearing you speak up, pun intended, if I'm hearing you speak up and I'm hearing Craig O'Neill talk about the importance of communication, and I say, look, I recognize that communication is a massive challenge in my shop, in my place of, in my business. We know now, Craig, that poor communication is actually costing business owners 18% of total salaries that are being paid out on an annual basis.
I've never dared
if I recognize this,
wow.
Say it again. Say it again.
I've never dared to quantify it. It's
wild.
Gotta be staggering.
Well, I mean, you think about it like this: if a shop owner is paying $1 million worth of salaries on an annual basis, that's almost $200,000 of sunk cost due to poor communication. So, if I'm a shop owner, if I'm a business owner, and I hear you on this podcast episode, what's the one piece of advice you would be giving me to start changing the direction of communication from poor to good, or even ultimately great? What would I start with?
One piece of advice: check out our Toastmasters Club and join one in your local community. Absolutely, 100%. It's free to join come as a guest, but membership in most clubs, I want to say it's somewhere between $20 and $30 now. I don't even pay attention when I click the button because it's at 6-month intervals. Like what, $30-$60 for 6 months? Cheapest professional development you can possibly imagine. And I go weekly to my club. Weekly. Some clubs meet bi-weekly, like our online club's a bi-weekly club, but you'll probably find some that are weekly, hopefully at a time that's agreeable to you in your area. And you can make it very consistent, a regular part of your life. It's worth the time. We talked about time earlier. It's worth the time.
Make the time when you don't have the time. So Craig, if you're listening, or audience rather, if you're listening to Craig and you are saying, okay, I'm in the industry, I'm in the automotive repair industry. Craig has already said, hey, you got a seat as a guest in my Toastmasters Club. Where can they find information on that club?
So yeah, that's a great question. So Remarkable Results Toastmasters is able to be found. I'll have to share it with you for the show notes because I don't have the URL straight in front of me. It should be rrtm.toastmastersclubs.org. That's Toastmasters, plural, clubs, plural.org.
Excellent.
But hey, I'd also add this, Josh. If you don't have time to check out the club, check out the Speak Up Effective Communication podcast and listen to our episodes there. There's some great gems, and we have some wonderful guests like yours truly.
Thank you, Craig. Yeah, man, and I appreciate the opportunity to be on. But man, you are an incredible guest on this episode. You're an incredible host of your own podcast, and you are an incredible communicator. I want to make sure that there's a reason why I'm like, hey man, I got to have Craig on. He's got to do the Speak Up episode because he is an incredible communicator, and it's because of resources like Toastmasters. It's because you're willing to get comfortable being uncomfortable, to ask questions, to live a life of curiosity. So man, I want to commend you for the job well done and the job you're going to continue to do being an ambassador in the automotive repair industry. Excellent job, Craig.
Thanks, Josh. Hey, and thank you for being on the mission field with me.
Of course. Happy to, man. Well, Craig O'Neill, thank you for being on the Limitless Leadership Podcast. Hopefully, this is not your last time. We're gonna make it a point to have you on periodically. But any parting words for our audience listening?
Oh man, I'll say the same thing I say when I sign off on the episode. Just remember to listen up before you speak up.
Love it. Listen up before you speak up. And thank you for being on this episode. Thank you for listening to this episode. Have a great day, everyone. Don't forget to smile today. Tell your loved ones how much they mean to you. I'm Josh Parnell, reminding you to keep leading well.